It is cleanup day in many of our communities following 4 confirmed tornadoes that touched down yesterday, 2 in Erie County and 1 each in Chautauqua and Genesee counties. The damage impacting places like Forestville, Eden, West Falls, and Darien. Well, this storm system wasn't necessarily unprecedented, but it was certainly rare. The remnants of Hurricane Beryl prompting those severe thunderstorms and multiple twisters. For the first time, we had a tornado touching down here in western New York in about 2 years. And think of this, in an average July, our entire state only sees 2 tornadoes. Yesterday alone, we had 6 statewide. This is some important context. There were 12.5 tornado warnings stretching from western New York at the PA line up to Lewis County near Watertown. National Weather Service meteorologist Heather Kenyon issued many of those warnings, and Heather joins me now live. It is great to have you on the show here, and I wonder if you could just put yesterday into perspective for us. We knew that there was a tornado risk with Beryl heading our way, but 8 tornado warnings just in our region. I believe that's more than we've ever had in a single day.
Yes, that's correct. It was a historic event for our forecast area. Again, that spans from western New York up into north central New York. Really, we hit record number of tornado warnings issued and a daily record for confirmed tornadoes already. And we're not even done yet surveying all the damage reports across our area. So it was definitely a historic event for all of us here at the Weather Service.
We always get the alerts from the Weather Service. Oftentimes they're related to winter weather, but sometimes they are, severe thunderstorm warnings or, in rare circumstances like yesterday, tornado warnings. Walk me through what you were doing and what was happening at the National Weather Service. And I imagine this was a stressful day for a lot of people yesterday. You must be included in that.
Yeah, so it was a team effort for sure, all hands on deck. We knew the remnants of Beryl were going to come into western New York days leading up to the event. We knew we were expecting, this tropical air mass to move into the area, something that you would see more so like in Georgia or Florida. So we knew that any thunderstorms that developed in the area would produce heavy downpours. But our confidence slowly increased with the potential for severe weather leading up to the event. It wasn't until a few days prior to that we knew that we were actually going to see some instability form, the energy needed for these strong thunderstorms. And with the location of Beryl just to our west, that added wind shear into the equation, which included the spin that those thunderstorms needed to produce those funnel clouds and tornadoes across the area. So coming into work yesterday, I think all of us were expecting a busy day. We had increased staffing. It was hands on deck. Did we expect that we were going to issue 18 tornado warnings in one shift? No. But we had teams of forecasters that were looking at multiple storms. These weren't just occurring, in western New York. We had a team of forecasters looking at the storms because they were at the same time up in Oswego and Lewis County. So it was really a team effort for all of us to watch these storms on radar.
Yeah, definitely an incredible day. Finally, before I run out of time, I want to ask you about the surveying that's been done by the National Weather Service. I think as of yesterday, we knew there were 2 confirmed tornadoes. We woke up this morning to find a 3rd, and then by right around noontime, we found out there was a 4th. Walk me through that process, and is it possible that there were more than 4?
Yes, it is possible. So what we do is that we collect all the damage reports from our trained weather spotters, from the media, from emergency managers across the area. We collect that, we put that into our database, we line it up with radar. If we believe that this storm did produce tornadic damage, now with drone footage, that's a huge help for us. And so then a team of forecasters goes out to the field, works with emergency managers to then pinpoint if this was tornadic or not.
Heather Kenyon with the National Weather Service, a meteorologist there, directly involved with those warnings yesterday, 18 of them in a single shift, as you mentioned. Thanks for taking some time for us today.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks.
All right. Well, considering we don't see severe damage from tornadoes very often, there have been some questions about insurance coverage. Here in New York State, as long as it's not related to flooding from a tornado's rains, damage from a twister is covered in the same way as it would be if it was from a blizzard or some other storm. But these tornadoes are a good reminder to take a look at your policy.
The longer you've been with a company or an agent, your coverages might not be up to date. That's what I see. So, especially with kind of what happened yesterday, I would recommend calling your insurance company, revisiting your coverage limits.
Andrew told me one misconception is if a tree falls on your car that's parked at your house, that you would file that claim with your homeowner's insurance. But he said it's actually on your vehicle policy, and that's one reason why comprehensive coverage may be better than just liability. Well, we continue our coverage now with Dr. Nick Bosel, who is director of the state's Weather Risk Communication Center at the University of Albany, joining us now live. Great to get your perspective on this as well. I know the center where you work is still relatively new, and I imagine you were quite busy yesterday as well. What perspective would you give us in terms of how unusual that was?
Yeah, thanks for having me. And yes, yesterday was probably one of our most active days so far. It was interesting because we had more tornado warnings issued in New York yesterday than any other day in recorded history for the National Weather Service. And thinking of places like Erie County and Buffalo, we had, I think, at least 2 confirmed tornadoes so far. And going back about 10 years, there had only been 4 over the previous 10 years or so. So just to put in perspective how unusual it is to get, not one, but multiple tornadoes in the area. It's very surprising.
I know that a big part of what the work that you do there at that center in Albany is helping give real-time information to local authorities. And yesterday you had that going on simultaneously here in Western New York, up in the North Country, in different parts of the state. Walk us through what was happening there yesterday during all of this.
Yeah, it can be challenging because yesterday, obviously, we had a tornado and other severe thunderstorm hazard in places like Buffalo and Western New York and the Finger Lakes region. But in areas of the North Country, Adirondacks, we had a heavy rainfall threat as well. So there's significant flooding up there. And sometimes it's difficult to communicate both of those hazards because you can think about what happens if you are worried about tornadoes and you're also worried about flash flooding. So if you're worried about flash flooding, you would go, say, upstairs to a higher elevation. If you're worried about tornadoes, you'd go to a basement. So being able to effectively communicate those different hazards is definitely a challenge and one of our core functions.
Yeah, finally, I know that you're always kind of looking to what's next. We've been told this is a very active hurricane season on the way. I mean, it's already this Beryl was a historic storm. Should we at least be prepared that we could see more of this? Because it's when these storms, hit the southern part of the country and then travel up to our area. Is this going to happen again, you think?
Chances are it probably will. I'm not going to say this exact scenario is going to happen again. That's probably unlikely, but it is probably safe to say we are more likely than not to get impacts from a tropical storm or hurricane, maybe not directly, but from its remnants like we did in this case.
Dr. Nick Bosel is director of the state's Weather Risk Communication Center there at the University of Albany. Really cool place, still relatively new, and we appreciate you taking some time for us.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
You bet.